The grand throne room of the Nyeri glimmered under the morning sun, its golden pillars reflecting the light like jewels. Queen Amina sat on her throne, her posture regal and commanding. She listened attentively as her council presented the day's matters, trade agreements, border dispute, and diplomatic missions. She nodded, gave orders, and maintained the composure expected of a queen. But as she ruled with an iron will, her heart remained heavy. Her gaze drifted occasionally to the window, where the distant hills of her childhood lay. Those hills held memories of a simpler time, when she was not a queen, but merely Amina, a girl with dreams and desires unburdened by duty. The Council of Elders, led by the stern elder Barasa, finished their reports. "Your Majesty," Barasa began, his voice heavy with age and authority. "The kingdom flourishes under your rule. However, the matter of your marriage remains unresolved. Prince Malik of Dakari has shown great interest. A union with him would solidify our borders and ensure peace." Amina's heart sank. She knew this discussion would arise sooner or later. "I understand the importance, Elder Barasa," she replied, her voice steady but distant. "I will consider it." But as she spoke, her mind wandered to another, someone from her past, who had once filled her heart with warmth and joy. Jabari, the boy from the hills, now a man returned after years of wandering. The mere thought of him stirred emotions she had buried deep inside. As the meeting adjourned, Amina retreated to a private chambers. The heavy oak door closed behind her, shutting out the world. She walked to the window and gazed at the horizon. A familiar face appeared in her mind, Jabari, with his infectious laughter and unyielding spirit. She had not seen him in years, but news of his return had reached her. The thought of seeing him again made her pulse quicken, but it also filled her with dread. How could she, a queen, entertain such thoughts? The marketplace buzzed with life as vendors called out their wares and children ran through the streets. Amina had disguised herself, draped in a simple cloak, to walk among her people unseen. It was here she could breathe, away from the confines of the palace walls. The smell of fresh bread, the chatter of merchants, and the laughter of children filled the air. But today, Amina wasn't just here to mingle with her subjects. She had heard that Jabari was back in Nyeri and was drawn to the marketplace, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. As she wandered through the crowded streets, her heart pounded with anticipation. Would he recognize her after all these years? What would he say? What would she say? Just as her thoughts began to overwhelm her, she heard a voice she hadn't heard in years. "Amina?" She turned, her breath catching in her throat. There he was, Jabari. He stood tall and proud, his once boyish face now marked with the experience of a warrior. His eyes, though remained the same, deep and full of life. "Jabari," she whispered, her voice trembling. He smiled, the kind of smile that had always made her feel safe, even as a child. "I heard rumors of a queen who walks among a people in disguise," he teased gently, but I never believed it until now. Amina couldn't help but smile back. "And I heard rumors of a warrior who returned to his homeland, carrying stories of faraway lands and great battles." "I've seen much," Jabari said, stepping closer, "but nothing compares to the beauty of home or to seeing you again." The words hung between them, filled with the weight of all that had been left unsaid over the years. For a moment, it was as if time had stopped and they were just two young souls, free from the burdens of their respective lives. But reality came rushing back. Amina was the queen, bound by duty, and Jabari was no longer just her childhood friend. He was a warrior, a man who had lived and fought in distant lands. Their worlds were different now, but the connection between them had not faded. "I've missed you," Amina admitted softly, surprising herself with the honesty of her words. "And I've missed you, Amina," Jabari replied, his voice filled with emotion. "More than you'll ever know." They stood in silence, the noise of the marketplace fading into the background. It was as if they were in their own world, where nothing else mattered. But Amina knew that this moment, as perfect as it was, couldn't last. "We must be careful," she said, breaking the spell. "The council, they wouldn't understand." Jabari nodded, understanding the implications. "I know, but for today, let's just be Amina and Jabari." For the rest of the afternoon, they walked together through the marketplace, talking and laughing as if no time had passed at all. It was a rare moment of happiness for Amina, a moment where she could forget about the pressures of the throne and simply be herself. But as the sun began to set, reality crept back in. Amina knew she had to return to the palace, to her duties, and to the life that was expected of her. As they reached the edge of the marketplace, she turned to Jabari. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "But I do know that today has been a gift." "It has," Jabari agreed. "And whatever happens, I will always be here for you, Amina. Always." With a heavy heart, Amina nodded and began to walk away. But she couldn't resist looking back one last time. Jabari stood there, watching her with the same intensity he always had. It was a look that spoke of promises made long ago, promises that neither of them had forgotten. The next morning, Amina sat in the council chamber, the warmth of her time with Jabari still lingering in her heart. But as the council members filed in, their faces stern and serious, she felt the weight of her responsibilities crash down on her once more. Elder Barasa was the first to speak. "Your Majesty, the matter of your marriage must be addressed. Prince Malik of Dakari has formally requested an audience with you. He is prepared to discuss the terms of an alliance." Amina's heart tightened at the mention of Prince Malik. She had met him briefly at a diplomatic event years ago. He was charming and intelligent, but she sensed an ambition in him that made her uneasy. "An alliance with Dakari would strengthen our borders," Elder Barasa continued. "It would ensure the stability of Yenri for generations to come." The other elders nodded in agreement, their faces mirroring Barasa's stern expression. They saw only the political advantage, the strategic benefits. They couldn't see the turmoil inside Amina, the conflict between her duty as a queen and her desire as a woman. "I understand the importance of this alliance," Amina said carefully. "But the decision to marry is not one I take lightly. Nor should you," Elder Barasa agreed. "But as queen, your personal desires must be secondary to the needs of your people." Amina's hands tightened on the arms of her throne. She knew they were right. As queen, her first duty was to her kingdom. But that didn't make the decision any easier. "I will meet with Prince Malik," she said finally, her voice steady. "But I need time to consider this proposal." The elders nodded, satisfied for the moment. But as they left the chamber, Amina felt the walls closing in around her. She had promised to consider Malik's proposal, but her heart was still with Jabari. How could she possibly choose between them? A few nights later, under the cover of darkness, Amina slipped out of the palace and made her way to the edge of the city, where the hills began to rise. She had sent word to Jabari, asking him to meet her there. She needed to see him, to talk to him without the prying eyes of the court. When she arrived, Jabari was already there, with his arms crossed. He looked up as she approached, his face lighting up in a way that made her heart ache. "Amina," he said softly, taking her hands in his. "What's wrong?" "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "The council is pressuring me to marry Prince Malik. They say it's for the good of the kingdom, but your heart isn't in it." Jabari finished for her. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I'm the queen. I'm supposed to put my people first. But how can I marry a man I don't love? How can I turn my back on what I feel for you?" Jabari pulled her close, holding her as she cried. "Amina, you are the strongest person I know, but you don't have to do this alone. Whatever you decide, I'll be by your side." Amina clung to him, wishing she could stay in this moment forever, but she knew it couldn't last. She pulled away, wiping her tears. "I don't know if I can do this, Jabari. I don't know if I can choose between my duty and my heart." "You shouldn't have to," Jabari said fiercely. "You deserve to have both. But if you're forced to choose, then choose what will make you happy. The kingdom needs a stronger ruler, yes, but they also need a ruler who is true to herself." His words gave her strength, but they also terrified her. What if she chose wrong? What if she sacrificed her kingdom for love, only to regret it later? As the night grew darker, Amina knew she had to return to the palace. But the thought of leaving Jabari, of possibly never seeing him again, was almost too much to bear. "Promise me something," she said, looking into his eyes. promise me that no matter what happens, you'll never forget me. Jabari smiled sadly. Amina, I could never forget you. You are in my heart, always. With a final lingering look, Amina turned and began the long walk back to the palace. But even as she left, she knew that her heart would remain with Jabari, no matter what decision she ultimately made. The following week, Prince Malik arrived in Yeri, his entourage filling the palace with a flurry of activity. He was as charming as Amina remembered, with a sharp wit and a smile that seemed to disarm everyone around him. But beneath the charm, Amina sensed something more, a hunger for power that unsettled her. The formal proposal took place in the Grand Hall, with the council and the nobility in attendance. Malik presented his case eloquently, speaking of the benefits of their union, the strength it would bring to both kingdoms. He spoke of peace, prosperity, and a future where Yeri and Dakari would stand as one. But as he spoke, Amina's mind drifted to Jabari. She imagined him standing beside her instead of Malik. Imagined a life where she could be both queen and woman, where she didn't have to choose between love and duty. When Malik finished, he turned to Amina, his expression expectant. What say you, your majesty? Will you join our kingdoms and lead our people into a new era of peace? All eyes were on Amina, waiting for her response. She felt the weight of the expectations, the pressure to make the right choice for her kingdom. But for the first time, she also felt the stirrings of rebellion. Why should she have to choose? Why couldn't she have both? I appreciate your proposal, Prince Malik, she began, her voice calm but firm. But this is not a decision I can make lightly. I must consider not just the political implications, but also the personal ones. I need time. The council murmured amongst themselves, but Malik simply smiled. Of course, your majesty. I respect your wisdom in taking the time to consider all aspects of this decision. I await your answer with great anticipation. With that, the formalities concluded, and the court dispersed. But as Amina returned to her chambers, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was running out of time. The pressure was mounting, and soon she would have to choose. Days passed, and Amina's indecision began to weigh heavily on her. The council grew impatient, the people whispered, and Prince Malik remained ever present, charming and confident. But it was Jabari's absence that gnawed her the most. Since their meeting in the hills, she had not seen him, and the distance was driving her mad. One evening, as she sat alone in her chambers, there was a knock at the door. It was one of her trusted handmaidens, her face pale with worry. Your Majesty, the handmaiden said quietly, there is something you should know. Amina's heart skipped a bit. What is it? The handmaiden hesitated, then stepped closer, lowering her voice. There are rumors that Prince Malik has discovered your meetings with Jabari. Amina felt the blood drain from her face. What rumors? Some of the palace guards have been talking. They say that Prince Malik has been asking questions about you, about your whereabouts at night. He suspects something. Amina's mind raced. If Malik knew about her and Jabari, it could spell disaster, not just for her, but for Jabari as well. She had to act quickly, but she wasn't sure what to do. Thank you for telling me, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. You mustn't speak of this to anyone else, do you understand? The handmaiden nodded and quickly left the room. Amina stood there, her heart pounding. She had been careful, but not careful enough. If Malik truly knew about her and Jabari, he could use it against her, and the consequences could be dire.